Hello. This morning, what I'm going to do is just read over the Criminal Justice Act or the Public Order Act of 1994. I'm then going to look at a video from Clonmel. And the reason I'm doing this is because across the country now at the moment, you're seeing people engage in peaceful protests, which is a constitutionally protected behaviour or activity. And what I'm recognising is from watching the Gardaí operate is that they're invoking the Public Order Act a lot in order to move these protesters on. So this isn't legal advice or anything like that. I'm literally just reading over, this is from the Irish statutebook.ie, and then I'm going to look at a video from Clonmel which happened a few days ago. So what is the Public Order Act? It gives a number of sections in this, from intoxication in a public place, disorderly conduct in a public place, threatening, abusive or insulting behaviour in a public place, distribution or display in public place of material which is threatening, abusive, insulting or obscene. And 8, this is what I've seen being invoked a number of times: a failure to comply with the direction of a member of the Garda Síochána. So what does that mean? Does that mean that at all times, in all places, in all situations, members of the public must comply with the directions given by a member of the Gardaí, who is also a public servant? Let's read. So, Article 8, number 1, point 1, quote, where a member of the Garda Síochána finds a person in a public place and suspects with reasonable cause that such person A is or has been acting in a manner contrary to the provisions of section 4, 5, 6, 7 or 9, which you just read the titles of, or B, without lawful authority or reasonable excuse, is acting in a manner which consists of loitering in a public place in circumstances which may include the company of other persons that give rise to a reasonable apprehension for the safety of persons or the safety of property or for the maintenance of the public peace. So, if a Garda suspects with a reasonable assumption or with a reasonable claim that you are going to be disruptive, or you're going to be not just disruptive, but you're going to be potentially a danger or a hazard to yourself or to other people in public, then a Garda can give you direction to leave the area or to move on. And then you must, I suppose, follow that. Otherwise, you'd be in breach of Section 8 of this Public Order Act. However, the devil is in the details here. So, hang on now. So if a Garda finds a person in a public place and suspects with reasonable cause, it's ill-defined, that such person, we go to B here, without lawful authority or reasonable excuse. So lawful authority is if you have a legitimate constitutionally protected reason for doing what you're doing, when you're not hurting or posing any danger or risk to anybody else, then this article or this section 8 of the Public Order Act, should not apply to you and cannot be invoked in order to move you away from a protest. That's as far as my understanding says about this, because what you're dealing with here is subjectivity, which is an individual guard's perception of what is going on. So you have reasonable cause that such person is behaving in a manner contrary to the previous sections of this article, or without lawful authority or reasonable excuse. Okay, so what we're going to look at next is protesting in the Constitution, the Irish Constitution. So what have we got here? Here is just, and people can go and read this up, and I would encourage people to go and read this for yourselves and to gain an intimate relationship and profound understanding of what these things mean, what these words actually mean, what they mean in terms of protection, and how these words can be used against you, I suppose. So from the citizensinformation.ie, and again, go read it yourself, we have Irish laws that protect, quote, Irish laws that protect the right to protest. Quote, a protester can break the law if they commit public order offences, as we've just read, like trespass or threatening and abusive behaviour, or if they are inciting hatred. The Irish Constitution and other human rights instruments protect your right to express yourself freely. There seems to be a bit of a contradiction in terms there. So in order to express yourself freely, which is give your opinion, give your perception of the reality in front of you, you might say things, express yourself verbally, express your experience of life verbally. That could then be taken by a guard subjectively to constitute a breaking of or a committal of a public order offence. So if you're giving your opinion on a situation and a guard subjectively determines that that opinion might be construed as threatening and abusive behaviour or inciting hatred, they could then invoke one of the articles of the Public Order Act or the Public Order Act itself. Okay, but they would also need, as far as I understand, to explain to you with how you're breaking the Public Order Act and which provision in the Public Order Act you're actually breaking. Okay, I have not seen this done. What I have seen done is Gardaí say, "Oh, you'll be arrested now under Section 8 of the Public Order Act." Okay, why? Because what I'm seeing is people protesting on public streets, on public property, and Gardaí invoking these things to arrest people without sufficient explanation or a legitimate sharing of information or sharing of the context of how these laws have been broken. Okay? And again, go read it freely. And next I'm going to have a look at the video that I was talking about. Now, before we get into this, let me offer you some context on the situation here. So this is Clonmel. We have land there that's belonging, as far as we understand it, to the HSE, which is public property. HSE is a public body. So the land is public property. Roderick O'Gorman and his, what would you call it? His department, say, and the government in tandem, because they are supporting it lock and step, okay? They are attempting to put in 82 modular homes to house IPAS people, which are people predominantly from Middle Eastern and African countries, with some Eastern Europeans in it, like Georgia, for example, okay? The locals in Clonmel are protesting this, which is their constitutional and legal right, a protected right, okay? So in the video there, you're looking at one of the workers from that site. So literally across the road from the entrance to that site, you have a wall adjacent to a housing estate. The protesters have been moved by the Gardaí from the public road outside the entrance to that site onto the pavement across the road, the footpath across the road. Now, and before moving these people, I've seen recorded Gardaí invoking the Public Order Act without any explanation when the actions are there on the camera in front of you. These people have been sitting down on the road protesting, and they have been moved by being threatened with 6 months in jail for committing a crime that would breach the Public Order Act, okay? Now, the other day, what we had was one of these workers, it's not the guy in this video as far as I know, was working on a fence, and there was 2 children on the opposite side of the fence, and this worker flashed a knife at them, flashed a blade at them. We had the following day, or the same day, sorry, we had a recording of one of the children's mothers speaking to the head of security in this building site, and he admitted on camera that yes, this did happen. We removed this guy that had flashed a knife, and he was dismissed the following morning, having been identified by a member of the Gardaí the previous night. We, as far as is understood, there is no, I suppose there's no record, or we have not been informed, people of Clonmel have not been informed, that's what I mean when I say we, that this man was arrested, okay? So, dangerous situation, volatile situation. Now, a day or two later, you have the protesters on the footpath, and you have the Gardaí who are 7-8 feet away from the protesters. And this worker came out, left the site, walked across the road with nobody knowing who he is. You can see there's a label on his helmet, but I don't see any identification as to whether he's worker or security there. Okay? He looks like a worker for all intents and purposes. So he walks across the road, and he has a fag. stands right in amongst the protesters and between the Gardaí and the protesters. And we'll watch the video now.
You're not moving unless it's over the guys. Big hard man. What's your names? On your hat on. No, nothing. None of you guys are going to let him come over and instigate like that. Lads, are you going to let him come instigate like that, lads? Lads, sorry, you going to let him instigate us like that? Turn your hat, lads. This is scandalous.
So what you're seeing there is this guy comes over, smokes a fag. He was obviously asked or told to move on. And he must have said to the people, I won't move on until the guards tell me to. Okay? So you see a member of the public there go to the Gardaí and say, are ye going to come over and let him instigate like that? So you have a volatile situation between the workers, the security in the site, and the locals. Okay? So after the previous day or the day before, when one of these workers flashed a knife at two children, you now have another one of these workers walk freely across the road and directly with intent to stand in amongst the protesters. The local man then says to the Gardaí, are you going to allow him to come and instigate like that? So you have a public servant there who's been addressed by a member of the public with a concern. What did the Gardaí do? We go back and have a look.
Instigate like that, lads. Lads, you going to let him come instigate like that, lads? Lads, excuse me, lads. Lads, sorry, you going to let him instigate us like that? Turn your hat, lads. This is scandalous.
You see the Gardaí not even acknowledge or look at the public, member of the public. Okay? So he's asking them, are you going to let this man come over and instigate like this? Because as far as the protesters are concerned, or as far as anyone's concerned, they don't know if this man has a knife on him or not. They don't know. The Gardaí, it doesn't, from the video at least, it doesn't even look like they tried to ascertain what the man's motives were. In fact, when asked if they were going to acknowledge the situation or address the situation, they literally turned their faces. They literally turned their attention away.
Lads,
So, one guard looking up the road away. Three guards. Literally, you can't say that this is just a couple of seconds where they weren't aware of what's going on. They literally turned their faces.
You going to let him instigate us like that? Turn your hat, lads. This is scandalous.
And when this is pointed out, they maintain the same posture. Now, this is purely speculation on my part, but would a guard's instinct not tell them, let's make sure the situation is okay here? Failure to do that could indicate, to me at least, that they were aware that this man was going to come across the road and their decision on their reaction was already made up. Or they don't care what happens there. They have no interest in ensuring anybody's safety because this man could very well have had a blade on him. This man could very well have come across the road to try and not just instigate, but to harass or hurt people. We don't know. People don't know. The protesters that are standing there, they don't know. And what my point in all of this is, what I'm getting at is, or hopefully getting at, is that we've seen the removal of two people. And by removal, I mean they've been arrested. One was dogpiled by 4 or 5 guards, with another 4 trying to block people from recording what was going on. That's what it looked like, at least. The other issue, or the other incident, was a young man who was standing outside the entrance of the site at night time. There was nobody within 10-15 feet of him until the guards pulled in. The guards then asked the man for his details, and he didn't give them, and they arrested him. So, when you're dealing with a situation like this, with the worker coming across the road, the Gardaí, they are either familiar with the intent of what this man is doing, or they're unfamiliar. If they're familiar with what this man is doing, then you're looking at collusion between the Gardaí and a private working firm, a private security firm, to allow this sort of antagonizing of people, okay? And if they don't know, then they should have been on this situation and asked this man, what are you doing here? Can you not go and smoke a fag up the road? Just as they've been doing to protesters, okay? So this man is working for the public. He's been paid out of your taxpayers' money, okay? He's working on public land. The Gardaí could have asked him to move on away from the protesters. They didn't. They literally turned the other cheek and looked the other way. All three of them looked off, didn't respond when asked to deal with the situation by a member of the public. Okay? On the other hand, though, they're very quick to invoke spurious public order acts to move people away from a constitutionally protected behaviour or activity, which is peacefully protesting. This is a two-tier justice system in Ireland. This is incredibly, incredibly dangerous. It's also incredibly worrying to people who would put their faith in the Gardaí as being bastions of freedom and bastions of the peace, okay? When we're seeing reams and reams and reams of evidence from across the country that this is not what they are doing. I would implore all Gardaí, from desk duty all the way up to Drew Harris, if you want to count him in as having any real concern for Ireland, I would implore ye to reevaluate what you feel your duty is to this country, to yourself, to your family, and to the people of this country. Because the behaviour that's constantly being recorded and shown here, from my ignorant eyes, looks totally illegal. It looks like these Gardaí are trampling all over their oath, which they swore to uphold the Constitution and the laws that are described in that. Not prescribed, but described. Okay? And they are facilitating government policy in tandem with big private corporations, in this case construction companies, to force through something that the Irish people in their localities, respective localities around the country, do not want. How do we know they don't want it? Because a vast number of people are protesting in this country, and we're seeing massive numbers of arrests of people. I won't say massive because it's not in the thousands, but it's in a sufficient enough quantity to make people scared or make people very, very worried and concerned about exercising what should be a constitutionally, and what is a constitutionally protected activity, which is peaceful protest. Okay? So make up your own mind around what you're seeing and what you're hearing. Go and read. And if you see a member of the Gardaí, politely ask him, what is your oath? Like, what is your job here? What is it you're here to do? Are you here to protect this government policy of making sure that these buildings go ahead? Or are you here to uphold the peace? Because it does not look like you're doing the latter. Okay? So have a good day.